For centuries, humans had stood at the pinnacle of creation, unrivaled in intelligence and dominance. However, that changed when a strange genetic mutation gave rise to a new species known as kimyos. These beings possessed enhanced strength, endurance, and regeneration, making them superior to humans in almost every aspect. What made them truly extraordinary, though, were their special abilities, known as talents. Most of these abilities were harmless, allowing manipulation of simple elements, control over internal structures, or even creating and extending parts of one's own body. In rare cases, however, certain kimyos could alter their entire cellular makeup at will, leading to vast mutations and transformations. Yet, not all of these abilities were benign. The powers possessed by elite kimyos were formidable enough to make humans tremble in fear, as their strength alone had the potential to bring about humanity's extinction. In the town of Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, the M-Pain's battleground was alive with energy. A host with a bombastic voice roused the crowd, hyping up the upcoming fights. M-Pain's was no ordinary battleground. It was the best legal martial arts tournament that money could buy. Fighters from all over came to test their skills, and the spectators were in for a brutal, adrenaline-pumping spectacle. The host, his voice reverberating across the arena, announced the 13th fight of the day, a rare match between a human and a kimyo. The audience erupted with excitement as the fighters were introduced. On one side stood the newcomer, Chi-Heart, a human titan from Red Ember Gym. His opponent was the deadly sharp kimyo known as Quill, a fighter with an impressive record of 15 wins and only 4 losses, representing Salt Lake Gym. The match was an unusual one. Fights between humans and kimyos were rare due to medical concerns, and the host had already cautioned the audience to brace themselves for bloodshed. Many had already counted the human out, but Chi-Heart's recent 3 consecutive victories made him a formidable contender. On the other hand, Quill was taken aback by the idea of fighting a human. Meanwhile, Chi-Heart found himself wondering what kind of trick his opponent had used to rack up 15 victories. Surely, no ordinary fighter could achieve such a record without an edge. As the match commenced, Quill smirked arrogantly and taunted Chi, warning him that he still had a chance to back out. Once he stepped into the octagon, there would be no turning back, no mercy. Then, Quill's talent, Porcupine, came into play. His muscle fibers stretched elastically, forming protruding barbs. Hardened layers of muscle covered these spikes, turning them into deadly quills. With a sudden burst of speed, Quill lunged forward with a punch. But Chi-Heart, using his immense strength and agility, dodged effortlessly. Quill, irritated by his opponent's evasiveness, goaded him further. "Stop turtling up. Show me what you've got," he sneered. Chi-Heart, analyzing his opponent, found it almost impossible to approach someone with such a dangerous ability. How could one fight defensively against an enemy whose very body was a weapon? Sensing his opponent's hesitation, Quill made a proposition. "Why don't you come at me without worrying about my spikes? I won't use them," he said, feigning sportsmanship. Chi-Heart hesitated. He knew it was a trap, but for a moment, he entertained the idea that Quill might actually be truthful. Choosing to believe in the goodness of others, he decided to take the chance and attacked. He aimed a punch at Quill's left flank, but as he drew near, Quill instantly extended his spikes, piercing into Chi's left side. Pain seared through him as he dropped to one knee, cursing, "Cheeky bastard." Quill, relishing his deception, mocked Chi further. "Get up," he jeered. But this moment of gloating cost him. It was then that Chi-Heart realized something crucial. Quill's spikes could only protrude from certain areas at a time. Moreover, he could not maintain them indefinitely, as doing so caused cramps. "So that's your weakness," Chi muttered under his breath. Out loud, he voiced his observation, and Quill, amused, confirmed it. "You're right. I can't keep them up for long. But let's fight fairly this time," Quill proposed again. But Chi-Heart had learned his lesson. He wouldn't fall for the same trick twice. Instead, he formulated a strategy. Whenever Quill protruded spikes from one side, the other side became vulnerable. This was the key to defeating him. Feigning acceptance of Quill's offer, he advanced once more. Quill, expecting a straightforward attack, extended his quills in one direction. But to his shock, Chi-Heart attacked from a completely different angle. His footwork was impeccable. He knew exactly when to step back, when to strike, and how to avoid the spikes. Seeing this, Chi-Heart launched a kick. Quill, experienced enough to anticipate it, went for a cross block, extending quills from both his arms. He assumed that once a kick was initiated, it couldn't be stopped mid-trajectory. But he had miscalculated. Chi-Heart masterfully changed his footing mid-air, retracting his leg and redirecting his attack. Before Quill could react, Chi-Heart struck him hard on the left side. The force of the blow stunned Quill. Furious, he reinforced that side with spikes. But Chi-Heart was already one step ahead. He immediately landed a powerful punch on the now exposed right side. Realizing that his usual tricks weren't working, Quill switched tactics. He grabbed Chi's hand, allowing his barbs to pierce through it. But Chi-Heart, instead of recoiling, gritted his teeth and, with sheer willpower, threw a devastating punch under Quill's face. The impact sent Quill reeling. His mistake had cost him dearly. He could not extend spikes from multiple places at once. Before he could recover, Chi-Heart delivered a brutal punch to the right side of Quill's face, sending him crashing to the ground. The referee stepped in, raising Chi-Heart's arm. Winner, Chi-Heart. The crowd erupted in deafening cheers as Heart walked away. He muttered, "Not bad for a human, huh?" And with that, he exited the octagon, victorious. Chi-Heart left the fighting ground immediately after defeating Quill. As he cleaned his wounds in the changing room, the host's voice blared all around, hyping up the next fight while also showering praise upon Chi-Heart, astonished by his victory over a kimyo. The noise barely registered in Chi's mind until he heard something behind him. Turning, he saw two men standing there. When he ignored them, they spoke up, revealing that they had placed a hefty sum on his loss. Since the fight had not gone as they had expected, they now demanded that he return every cent he had won at their expense. They warned him not to act like a hero, especially in his injured state after the brutal match with their boy, Quill. Unfazed, Chi-Heart smirked and nonchalantly replied, "If that were the case, you should have closed the door before you started." A few moments later, he emerged from the changing room and walked toward the exit. He paused in the hallway before the receptionist's desk, where the news played on a screen behind her. He greeted her, "Hey, Demalia." She greeted him back, complimenting his fight and reassuring him that the wounds on his face only made him look more handsome. He chuckled at the remark. She then mentioned the extravagant party held once a month after the tournament, playfully chastising him for never making time to join her. He apologized, explaining that he had something to take care of at home. She handed him his winnings, teasing that if he ever felt lonely, he knew where to find her. Just before leaving, he casually mentioned that he had seen two injured men in his changing room and suggested that she inform the administration to check on them. With that, he walked out. Later that night, in his apartment, Chi-Heart soaked in his bathtub, his body aching from head to toe. Painkillers were scattered across the counter, but despite the agony coursing through his muscles and bones, he found solace in it. The pain reminded him that he was alive, that enduring hardship was far better than living a meaningless life. The next morning, his friend Tevin arrived to pick him up, accompanied by his girlfriend. As they waited for him outside, she remarked on how long Che always took to come down, joking that he must have a girl up there. Tevin dismissed the idea with a laugh, knowing full well that Che's personality wouldn't allow a single girl to tolerate him for a day. When Che finally appeared, he grumbled at them to speak louder, sarcastically noting that it wasn't like it was only 6 in the morning. Tevin, having known him for 15 years, pointed out that despite living in the same apartment for the past 7, he had never once let him inside. "What are you hiding in there? Or are you selling drugs?" "My grandfather needs Advil," he added mockingly. Rolling his eyes, Che climbed into the car, and they drove off. When they arrived at the gym, Tevin's girlfriend asked if she should pick him up at 4. Tevin nodded in appreciation before heading inside. This was their dojo, where they had trained under Master Leo Thomas, a war hero from the brutal conflict between humans and kimyos that had taken place 61 years ago. That war had claimed more innocent lives than anyone cared to count. To the fighters here, Master Leo was more than a mentor. He was a father figure. Many of the trainees came from troubled backgrounds, and under his guidance, they had found purpose. Inside the gym, Master Leo was training a young fighter named Azam, whose talent lay in his extraordinary speed. However, he was misusing it, making his movements too predictable. As they sparred, Master Leo spoke firmly, imparting wisdom with each move. Listen carefully, he instructed Azam. Each of you here possesses a unique talent that makes you one of a kind. But raw talent isn't enough. You must hone it, maximize its potential. Otherwise, you'll end up just like any other human fighter. He continued grappling with Azum, skillfully countering his attacks. Finally, he pinned the young fighter down, his voice unwavering as he delivered his final piece of advice. Either you master what's within you, or you'll lose it. Che Hart and Tevin watched from the sidelines, impressed by the lesson. That's some real talk, Tevin mused. Then, with a smirk, he added, it'll be hilarious when Master kicks your ass for that fight yesterday. Che scoffed. Whatever, Tevin. Your girlfriend drives you around, you man-child. Meanwhile, Master Leo reassured Azum not to be discouraged by this defeat, promising that they would refine his tactics in future training. Other trainees observing the session murmured among themselves, acknowledging Azum's dedication and potential. One of them turned to Che and smirked. By the way, Master's been saying he has a bone to pick with you. Hope you signed the waiver. At that moment, Master Leo called out Che's name. A wave of apprehension washed over him. Looking at Tevin for help, his friend merely shrugged. I'm a man-child, remember? How can I help you? Che reluctantly stepped forward, greeting Master Leo, only to be met with a sharp reprimand. Didn't I forbid you from getting involved in underground fights? What happens when you face a stronger Kimyo? Master Leo eyed his injuries disapprovingly. I can't lose another son, he muttered, his voice low but firm. Without warning, he threw a punch, landing a devastating blow on Che's face. The impact made Che feel as if his soul had momentarily left his body. Coughing, he hunched over, struggling to regain his breath. Master Leo smirked. Didn't you become an underground fighter now? Then how could you let your guard down? Che barely had time to recover when the master spoke again. Let's begin. But before he could finish, slow clapping echoed through the gym. The room fell silent as everyone turned to see who had arrived. Walking toward them with a smug air of superiority was none other than Rokash Rampersad. He was flanked by his men. Rokash wasn't just any fighter, he was a major figure in Trinidad, one of the top 150 documented kimyos in the world. His power, reputation, and arrogance had earned him both fear and hatred. When Rokash called out Leo Thomas's name, Tevin commented on the intrusion, questioning who had dared to interrupt their training. It was clearly stated at the entrance that no one was allowed during training hours. Leo told Rokash that he had no right to be here, as he was no longer welcome. Rokash, unfazed, brushed off the comment and nonchalantly replied that this was no way to greet a former student. This revelation shocked the other students. This man had once been under their master's tutelage. The students, rallying behind their teacher, insisted that Rokash leave. He smirked at their defiance, acknowledging their fire and even inviting them for a spar. Leo Thomas, unamused, told Rokash that he hadn't changed since the last time he was here. His voice burned with the embers of old anger as he commanded him to leave. Rokash, however, remained composed, reminding Leo that it had been 25 years since he walked away from this place. He mocked the old master, saying that even though Leo had once stood at the pinnacle of human strength, he never truly understood what real power meant. Before leaving, he made a chilling promise. Leo would acknowledge his power before he died. Later that evening, Che approached Master Leo, concern evident in his voice. He asked if he was all right and what had transpired between him and Rokash. Master sighed and revealed that Rokash had once been a student when their dojo was still small, with only 4 students. Though gifted, his arrogance had been his greatest obstacle, preventing him from truly mastering his abilities. Ironically, he was still one of the strongest students Leo had ever trained. Rokash never took fighting seriously, always jesting and grinning, challenging others recklessly. Once, behind Leo's back, he had invited Jacob Kim for a fight. It was a mistake from the start, and in the end, Rokash had killed him. Though there was an investigation, he had escaped punishment, the authorities ruling it an unintentional murder. From that moment, he had never set foot in the dojo until now. Che was appalled. How could someone get away with such a horrendous crime? But if Rokash showed up again, Che vowed he would put him in his place. Master Leo smirked, teasingly imitating a baby's voice, saying, "Now a human is making threats against kimyos?" Che chuckled, but then grew serious, assuring the old master that this time, his students truly had his back. Master Leo nodded, reassured, but urged Che to go home and tend to his chores. He would finish the remaining cleaning here. Che, taking the cue, left. Che Hart later visited Dr. Evans' clinic. After exchanging greetings, the doctor teased him, saying it was a miracle to see him in one piece. He mentioned his daughter had just given birth to her sixth child, to which Che jokingly remarked that she was a superhero. Putting aside pleasantries, Dr. Evan turned serious and spoke about Che's health. He had topped up his medications, instructing him to take amoxicillin once a day to prevent internal bleeding. Then, he inquired about his left eye. Che admitted that he could still only see 60% from it. The doctor frowned, cautioning him that although his body was stronger than most humans, thanks to Leo Thomas's training, he needed to stop pushing himself. His recent medical reports were concerning. His ruptured lungs hadn't been given enough time to heal, his clavicle was fractured, his shoulder socket was bruised, and severe tissue and muscle scarring had accumulated. There were also injuries on his right side, nerve damage on his left, and ongoing internal bleeding. The doctor warned that no matter how much he tried to hide it, his friends and family would soon notice his pain. He was at his breaking point. Were these fights truly worth it? Was the money really enough to justify pushing himself toward an early death? Che appreciated the concern but remained steadfast, saying that his winnings went toward a good cause. Until he could no longer fight, he would continue. Before leaving, he jokingly commented on the doctor's good health, teasing that his wife must still be forcing him to do yoga. Dr. Evan laughed, mentioning that he was now practicing karate. He advised Che to take care of himself and live a long, happy life before bidding him farewell. Back at the gym, Master Leo was reading when he heard the door unlock. Without turning around, he already knew who it was. He sighed, his voice laced with both amusement. "You really haven't changed, Rakesh." Meanwhile, Che Hart called Tevin, who was lounging with his girlfriend. He expressed unease after Rakesh's threats against Master Leo and suggested they check on him. Tevin, however, dismissed the idea, arguing that Rakesh wouldn't be foolish enough to go after the man who made him. Che felt somewhat reassured and decided he would check in on Master early the next morning. Tevin bid him good night, mentioning that if he didn't hang up now, he'd incur the wrath of the woman lying on his chest. His girlfriend then playfully took the phone, informing Che that she was reclaiming her man for the night before hanging up at the dojo. The fight between Master Leo and Rakesh was already in full swing. The clash of raw power and refined technique sent shockwaves through the room. Rakesh's nephew, witnessing the intensity, panicked and fired a shot at Master Leo, striking him in the left side of his abdomen. A surge of pain flooded through Leo's body. For the first time in decades, he questioned his strength. Since when had he become weak enough to be affected by firearms? Rakesh, furious at his nephew's interference, demanded to know where he had gotten the gun. But before the boy could answer, Leo summoned his Fire Phoenix technique, sending Rakesh's nephew crashing into the wall. Gritting his teeth, the master declared that Rakesh had never known how to take responsibility. Rakesh, enraged, spat back. "What do you know about responsibility? You never acknowledged my strength. Jacob knew from the start that he could never surpass me. So why did he accept the challenge?" Master Leo's eyes burned with fury. Don't say Jacob's name. He could feel his body weakening from the gunshot wound, but he refused to back down. He acknowledged that this injury might very well kill him, but if this was to be his last stand, then he would make sure Rakesh understood the full weight of his mistakes. With unwavering resolve, he surged forward, engulfed in fiery determination. Rakesh called out to Leo Thomas, challenging him to a fight. As a kimyo, Leo had been blessed with the talent of Aleos, the Phoenix Flame, one of the original 4 talents, allowing him to enter the Aleo state, the Sunfire talent. Without hesitation, he launched himself at Rakesh, landing a powerful punch on his right side. Rakesh retaliated, throwing his own blow, but Leo evaded and swiftly grabbed him by the collar, hurling him upward. Without giving him a moment to recover, Leo followed, launching a devastating aerial attack. Rakesh, taken aback, found himself completely overpowered, his talent seemingly frozen in fear. Leo pressed forward with a ferocity that left no room for counterattacks. Executing his signature move and using Descending Meteor, sending Rakesh crashing into the ground, deeper into the pits of the earth. Realizing that his strength was depleting and his wounds would not heal, Leo exhaled heavily. He looked down at Rakesh, his eyes burning with both sorrow and conviction. He acknowledged his own inevitable demise but promised that before he perished, he would make sure Rakesh lived a maimed life until his very last breath. With that final act of defiance, he stepped forward, reached down with his bare hand, and tore out Rokash's As the pain-ridden screams of Rokash echoed through the collapsing building. Leo fell to his knees, flames beginning to engulf him. His body trembled, his breath shallow. His last thoughts and whispered word were, "Che," then the fire consumed him. Outside, Rokash's nephew, sensing the building crumbling around them, urgently called to him, snapping him out of his agony. Still screaming, Rokash was dragged out of the wreckage, the pain of his lost eye burning deeper than the fire left behind. Days later, at the graveyard, friends and students of Leo Thomas gathered for his funeral. The atmosphere was thick with sorrow as his closest companion addressed the mourners. He spoke of Leo not as a warrior, but as a man of profound kindness. Though the world had revered him for his legendary power, those who truly knew him held him in the highest regard for his boundless heart. His flame was not just in battle, but in the love he gave to those around him. As the funeral continued, a group of Leo's students, unable to contain their rage, approached Che. One of them, voice-laced with frustration, declared that they all knew who was behind Leo's death. Sitting back and mourning wouldn't bring justice. Another student revealed that he had been keeping tabs on Rokash and had learned that he was organizing a grand tournament next month to celebrate his standing among the top 150 kimyos worldwide. The winner of the tournament would earn the right to face Rokash in combat, his sick idea of a prize. With unwavering conviction, they insisted that Che enter the tournament and represent their dojo, the Red Embers. Only 2 combatants from each establishment could participate, and they wanted him to be one of them. Che hesitated, shaking his head. Unlike the others, he had no special talent, no supernatural abilities that set him apart. How could they expect him to go up against kimyos? Tevin, standing beside him, dismissed his doubts without hesitation. "It doesn't matter," he said firmly. "You've never needed talent to be strong. You've always been acknowledged by the master as the best in combat. We have faith in you." He then placed a reassuring hand on Che's shoulder and added, "Besides, you won't be alone. I'm going in with you." Che took a deep breath, his heart weighed with grief, but ignited with a burning determination. He looked at the faces around him, his comrades, his family in battle. They had lost their master, but they would not lose their resolve. The fire within Leo Thomas had not died. It had simply passed on to those who remained. Clenching his fists, Che let the rage settle into unwavering resolve. His voice, steady and laced with iron determination, broke the silence. "If we all agree on the same target, then tell me, when do we start?"